I'm Mel Homer, and it's time to talk with Harold Hillman, Managing Director of Sigmoid Curve Consulting Group. He is a leadership expert, executive coach, and an author as well. Harold, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mel. What a beautiful day here in Auckland. I hope it's that way across the country.
It's not bad around much of the country, actually. Hey, let's talk about the second half of the year, about pacing yourself in the second half of 2021, because it's the 1st of August. We're well and truly into that second half now. I mean, what do we need to, what's the thing with it? Why does it become an issue?
Well, I've certainly noticed a fatigue in general across organizations, and certainly with leaders who, of course, over the last year and a half have dealt with just a very unique, challenging scenario that had very tangible impact on what we would call wellness, that chronic effect. It's still around us. And so what I'm observing is that what I typically see in November or December with people who are pacing themselves to the end of the calendar year, you start to see a bit of fatigue. I'm seeing that earlier now. And personally, I'm feeling it. Can you relate to that?
Oh, I can completely relate to it. Absolutely. So what is resilience in? I mean, how do you define that term?
It's the ability to bounce back from adversity. And the idea that if you keep things in context, you grow resilience by pushing through adversity. It was Dr. Aristotle 24 centuries ago who suggested that leaders go out and seek adversity in order to build character. A big part of that being the ability to rebound quickly. And COVID has certainly put that into context for us, Mel. There have been significant anxiety and depression spikes in New Zealand and around the world. And it's really become real. It's become health and safety used to feel like a bit like a compliance exercise, whereas over the last decade and certainly over the last 18 months, the word wellness has been attached. And it feels more visceral, where people actually believe that they do need to get on the front foot and be very proactive around keeping their health and their wellness front and center.
Is resilience, is it a mental thing? Is it a physical thing? Is it a bit of both?
It's a bit of both, Mel. It's you can see how interchangeable it is. And so for a person who is under emotional stress, it typically will then take its toll physically on that person, or a person who is in physical distress, where it then has impact on mental resilience as well. So this whole domain of wellness is a combination of both physical things to do to keep yourself physically well, as well as mentally or emotionally well. The whole person is entailed in this under this construct that we call resilience.
I think there's been a lot of thoughts about resilience too when we've been watching the Olympic athletes and how they come back from having a shocker, and they've got to pick themselves up and keep going and be resilient.
Absolutely. It is in the moment. It is a lot of organizations now are being very purposeful around it. And I've done a little bit of research in terms of wellness programs, both in New Zealand and around the world. And you can see these things that would be important, and that is being able to keep things into proper perspective. That's called reframing. And that when people get anxious, they typically will their perspective will go inward and downward. Hence the reason why some people obsess or ruminate when things start to unfold. So the idea is to pick your perspective back up and outward. The significance of physical exercise, at least 2 times a week. The ability to infuse humor into your life. The old adage that if you're not laughing, be very concerned about that, so even when going through a crisis.
So these are all ways that you can make yourself a bit more resilient.
That's right. That's right. Being on the front foot, being more purposeful around it. And I would say one of the factors was knowing and nurturing your passion. And that is things that really do energize you both physically and mentally. or emotionally. Things for many people, Mel, that was traveling. Where they would
Remember
be able to that. Exactly. New Zealanders have been supporting travel around New Zealand. But for many people, going to other parts of the world was actually a part of their psychological energy. People need to now, certainly between now and the end of the year, be purposeful about plugging into those things that fuel you, that energize you. That I call it those things that where you're in flow, meaning that you look up and it's 3 hours later. You've been working in your garden, and the whole afternoon has passed, but you've been so absorbed. For some people, it's cooking, but for me, it's writing. For some people, it's music. Those types of things that really do energize you, energize your psyche, energize your body.
Because it's you talk about the laughing as well, and as we often say, there's that gallows humour quite often at work, where you have your own little laughter pods, shall we say, with other people in your workplace, where you laugh about very inappropriate things, but it's what keeps you going, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. The humor component is an important one, and that is it really does tell people that you are keeping things in proper perspective. I mean, we all have certainly worked our way across the last 18 months with a degree of uncertainty and anxiety or vulnerability. The idea that we have been building a playbook as we go along. Especially if you're a leader, if the leader isn't laughing, the team typically isn't laughing. Not in a bizarre sort of cursory level laughter, but just the idea that, hey, we've pushed through a lot. We still have a long way to go, but there is some joy, some humor, something in there that just helps to energize the team a bit more. And I just think leaders of teams in small and big organizations just need to be mindful that there is a lot of energy associated with people enjoying themselves. Humor.
Yeah. It is important. And are there any resources in New Zealand where listeners could learn more?
Yes, there is the Resilience Institute run by Dr. Sven Hansen. I have a lot of time and regard for Sven. And then there are other organizations. One is called Foresight. One is called Umbrella. And one is called Bright Star. And I would suggest that if your listeners want to learn more about the topic of resilience and pacing themselves, check out those organizations.
So you can actually train for resilience.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Certainly athletes do. And the idea that, again, it's part of it is physicality, but a big part of it is mentality as well. The idea of a big part of resilience is being attuned to those two inner voices that sit with us each and every day, the inner critic and the inner coach. Mm-hmm. And sometimes under pressure, the inner critic tends to, the volume tends to increase on the inner critic's voice as opposed to the inner coach. And so that's the real value of also having a strong social support network around you, because people can come up to you and tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, you seem a little down. Anything going on. Sometimes we can't see it. And the real benefit of having a strong social support network around us is that people can infuse a bit of objectivity in terms of what they're seeing from us, which sometimes really shakes you up. And, whoa, I didn't realize I was coming across that way.
Yeah. Harold, thank you so much. Always a pleasure talking to you, and your book launch is getting nearer and nearer. I'm getting quite excited about that. Not
Me
long
too, Mel. Thank
not
you.
long to go now, and we'll be talking about that in the next couple of weeks or so. Harold, thank you so much. Harold Hillman, executive coach. And if you want more information from Harold about what he does, sigmoidcurve.com is his company.